Hey up everybody, my name is Joshua Morrison, director of Johnny Moz's Lessons in Confidence. Today I want to talk about my first ever job that I had, right? I worked in a Wetherspoons from about 2017 to about late 2018. It was my first job that I ever had, right? And I just sort of want to make this video to sort of say why you should work in a pub as your first job. If you're in the UK at least, this is kind of a regional thing, but I suppose it applies to America, say working in a bar or whatever, I suppose anywhere in the world really, work in a bar. The reason I think it's a really good starting point is, one, it's a really simple job, right? And all you got to do is you pour drinks, you do the close downs, you do the bottle ups, you wipe down tables and stuff, you serve food or whatever, right? Simple things, right? But it's quite a physical job, you know, you're moving around a lot, and it's also a social job because you're talking to a lot of people, right? So physicality, sociability, right? You're working usually quite late hours, right? These three things, I think, while you're young, are very, very good to do, because particularly working in a pub, you don't need any qualifications or anything like that, and pubs are generally like looking out for staff. I see so many Indeed posts about people looking for bartenders. Apparently they can't get enough bartenders, right? And I think if you're young, right, it's easy money, you know, and it also develops your social skills. There's someone, because I work in a pub, I've done loads of different jobs in my time, but I've gone from a pub to working a load of other things, and now I'm back to working in a pub as a sort of a side thing for this. I suppose they kind of go hand in hand, right? And there's someone who started at this job, right, who's, they've just come out of school, right? I think they're like 18, they just turned 18. And they're a little bit introverted, they're a little bit shy, and they're a little bit like unconfident in themselves. And I've seen their confidence grow as time has gone on, right? As they've settled into the role, right? And as they've started to talk to people, right? Because particularly in most pubs, you know, the punters will talk to you, you've got to talk to the staff while you're behind the bar and not much is going on. You have to have that little bit of small talk. So it develops your social skills, and it develops your ability to take, not necessarily criticism, but to take sort of uncomfortable situations and turn them around and find responses to things, right? You know how you might be in a weird situation, right? Where someone's kind of annoyed you, and you don't have a good comeback in the moment, and then you're having a shower later on and you're like, oh, that would have been a really good comeback, right? Working in a pub presents you so many of these very low stakes versions of that situation where someone says something that's a little bit annoying, and you can slap out for comeback, right? And it's kind of fun, it's a little bit of banter, you know, in that kind of way. And I find that working in a pub is really good for developing that skill of talking and being yourself in new situations, right? There's another thing that I like about working in a pub is you don't particularly have to put on that professional facade that you do in like office environments or corporate environments. It's very much a sort of down to earth, you are who you are sort of thing. I mean, I've been to pubs where people are like, because I'm kind of a miserable sod, right? And I've seen people that are even more miserable sods than I am. And I like it, right? I remember I went to one pub in Derbyshire and the bartender was the most miserable fucking bastard that I must have ever met in my life, right? But in that environment, it worked, you know, in terms of customer service. He wasn't rude or anything like that. That's the clear definition. He wasn't rude. He was just a bit of a miserable sod. And I kind of enjoyed that. I enjoyed talking to him and just sort of seeing a slightly cynical worldview, you know? So I think working in a pub is really good for developing your social skills, right? Because particularly now with everyone being online all the time, physical friend groups are becoming less and less of a thing for young people, and Discord servers are becoming the new thing. All the 18-year-olds I talk to, all their friends seem to be on Discord, you know, playing whatever, Minecraft or whatever the new thing is, right? God, I sound like I'm fucking 80 years old. But I'm only 26 as well. But that's what they're doing. They're all on Discord and talking to people on Discord and staying within their little niches, you know? And they don't really get out into the physical real world nearly as much. And if they do a job like working from home in an office and recruitment or anything like that, because recruitment is another job where people with no qualifications end up in recruitment, right? They may be talking to people, but they have this facade. They have this is me at the job version of me, and this is the normal me that talks on the Discord servers, right? And it's just really useful, instead of working in that kind of environment where you end up having two halves to yourself, working in a pub where you develop your social skills as a real version of yourself, right? Where do you think I've been able to get this ability to just talk in one take to a camera for so long, right? It's because I've developed my social skills by working in social environments, right? Why do people go to the pub? For social reasons. The pub is one of the best third spaces in the world. if you don't understand the concept of a third space, basically it's a concept that I read about a little while ago, and the idea is you have your first space, which is home, and then you have your second space, which is work, and then you have your third space, which is somewhere else that you go to relax or to be yourself, right? It can be a cafe, a library, a pub, for example, right? Anything like that, right? And I find that a pub is really good because it almost combines your second and third spaces a little bit, particularly in like, you know, working man's pubs where it's not particularly professional, you know, and you know, you've got decent management. You can kind of combine your second and your third spaces because, yeah, you're on the job, you know, you're obviously doing the work, but at the same time, you're almost like hanging out with some of the regular punters. You have a bit of a chat with them, you get to know them, they get to know you a little bit, you have a bit of a back and forth, and generally they're sort of older people that are better with banter and all that kind of stuff, and they might rib you a little bit, and then you rib them back a little bit. And that's a really good thing to develop your social skills. And going back to that person that started at my job, right, I've seen them blossom into a really social creature that's able to, you know, slap back at people that say, you know, like take the piss. They're able to keep up a conversation, whereas before they were really shy. They've really come out of their shell. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing. And I think for young people, it's really worthwhile just working in a pub. Right? My first job was in a Wetherspoons, and I would recommend not to shill for Wetherspoons or anything. I would recommend you start off in a Wetherspoons, even if it's only for a couple months, because I'll tell you this, working in a Wetherspoons is fucking dog shit. Anyone who's worked in a Wetherspoons, leave your comments below about how shit it is working in a Wetherspoons, because I know your pain, right? It's one of the most intense and difficult pubs to work in the whole industry, the most difficult pub chains to work in. And the reason is because the expectations are so high. They do food, and they don't keep enough staff on, and they work you to the bone. Right? They make up for it by giving you a free meal, right? Which basically every other pub that does food, they'll only give you a discount. They give you a free meal every time. So it's kind of fun. When I was working in Wetherspoons, I just tried everything on the menu, and I learned, don't get the curries, don't get anything with meat like burgers or anything like that. The pizzas are good. They've got ramen noodles, which are quite good, but steer clear of meat stuff because, yeah, be wary of it, right? But the reason that it's such a good thing to start off at Wetherspoons is the Wetherspoons, they have very low expectations of the staff, even though they expect them to do a lot in terms of just pure graft. Most people that work in Wetherspoons are new to the industry. And when you've worked in a Wetherspoons, most other pubs that aren't Wetherspoons will see that as a good thing that you've worked in that environment, because they see you're able to survive a Wetherspoons, you'll definitely be able to survive working in our shitty little pub. So I would really recommend, if you just turned 18, if you're really young and you've not really had a proper job before, right, and you're trying to figure out your life path, right, you're on the dole or whatever, get a job at a Wetherspoons, get a job in a pub anywhere, right? Just try it, right, for, you know, a couple months. You know, they have really high turnover, so you don't have to stay there forever, you know, they're not expecting you to stay there forever, right? I stayed there much longer than I would have needed to, really. I stayed there for like 1.5 years, which is longer than what most people stay there for, right? And in my current job, I've been there for about 1 year, which is longer than most people stay, right? But it's a really good first opportunity to get yourself into new environments and to develop your social skills and to develop your physical skills as well, to develop your physicality. It gets you moving rather than just being sat comatose at a computer, you know? If you're working in an office, if you're working in recruitment, you know, you're at home, you're on the computer, you go to work, you're on the computer, you go home, you're on the computer again, you're just sat there on computers all the time. And it's just it's really bad for your physical sense of self, it's bad for your mental well-being. I find working in a pub, it keeps the cogs whirring in the brain. And I just think that's a really worthwhile thing to do. It's worthwhile working in a pub. And if you're really young and you're just getting started in the job career market, I would say to you, start working in a pub, specifically working at Wetherspoons for a little bit, and then when you get sick of it, when you realise that the job is completely shit, start working somewhere else. Because if you're working at Wetherspoons, you can get a job in any pub as a bartender, right? That's hiring. So yeah, that's it from me. Leave your thoughts below. Are you a bartender? Leave your thoughts below about everything that I've said here. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Leave your thoughts below. I'd love to hear them. And do you have any other tips for young people that are just getting into the workforce? What would you say to, you know, an 18-year-old, say if you're a dad or a mum, what would you say to your kid that's just turned 18 and they're looking to get a job? What would you say to them as a good first start? So that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Take care and bye-bye.